just thinking about YouTube, and I'm prompted here by your video there, Gary, regarding an open letter to YouTube and some of the problems that Google, YouTube confront, or present really, that we have to confront. I think there's a whole bunch of things really to do with it. I'm going to just spend a few minutes whinging about YouTube, if you'll excuse me for that. I mean, the first thing, Gary, is yeah, I absolutely agree. It's a popularity engine. Google is a marketing company, as you rightly point out. That's where their ad revenue comes from. That's the only source of their revenue to speak of. And you know, everything is tailored towards that particular bottom line, which means that there's an unholy alliance between popular video makers, which means lowest common denominator video makers, between the viewers of those makers, and the advertisers. You know, all the people you'll see on the front page of YouTube, Shane Dawson, Onision, well, you know the suspects, Annoying Orange, you know, are making bland, easily consumable content for bland, easily consumable people in order to be sold bland, easily consumable products. I mean, it's a perfect match. And those of us who are not interested in that for whatever reason, and I'm not saying our content is necessarily good, but at least we're trying, I guess, I don't know. Or don't have aspirations to do that. Or even if we do have aspirations to do it in a slightly different way. But those of us who aren't playing that game are out of the loop for all kinds of reasons. We're not making popular videos, we're not appealing to advertisers, and we're not clicking on adverts. So we're just out of the loop completely, really. So I would concur with that. And at the end of the day, Google has no responsibility to us, nor does it have any incentive to appeal to us. And unfortunately, I don't see a non-profit alternative coming on anytime soon. It would be great if there was an online version of the public library, this kind of thing, but it ain't going to happen, is it? At least not in the foreseeable future. We have to find ways to work the system, or treat it as a temporary autonomous zone, something like that. Find the gaps in the system. It seems to me, I don't know what the alternative is. Okay, just a number of things associated with. I mean, I've got other complaints as well, actually, which aren't really to do with Google. I'll just, yeah, all right, I'll do them all at once. Some other things we can do if we wanted to in terms of working within the system. One of the things I've been thinking about doing, for example, is just not watching any partner videos at all. Just kind of refusing to participate in the partner thing. And I'm saying this as a partner myself. I'm still trying to find a way to rescind my partnership. I joined it when it was the only way you could get longer videos on, and now of course anybody can, or pretty much anybody can. It's just a bloody albatross around my neck, really. But one of the things I would like to do is just like not play the partner game, really, and just not watch any, not only not become a partner myself, but not watch any partner videos, just boycott partner videos. I wouldn't want to do that, because of some people like Professor Anton, like Happy Cabby, you know, people I enjoy watching who are partners. But I'd give that up if it was yeah, I would be prepared to give that up. I mean, it wouldn't change anything in any great extent. It wouldn't stop me being presented with adverts, full stop. But at least it would get rid of some of the stuff, and it would probably feel a bit better myself. So that's one option. A feature I'd like to see, and this is wandering off topic into the areas of arrant speculation. A feature I'd like to see, which kind of relates to this, is to do with subscriptions, actually. And it relates to stuff I've talked about before. Because those of us who are doing what I do, and what a few other people here do, this coterie of people who are in this little neck of the woods, it's not got mass appeal, and that's a bad thing. But it's not a bad thing, is it, at all, really? It's not a bad thing to not have mass appeal. To have niche appeal, to attract 200 people to what you say, is a really good thing. It's a really great thing. And that's really muddied in all kinds of ways. And one of the ways it's muddied right now is the way that subscriptions work. I mean, I've got, I don't know, 8,000 subscribers, maybe, something like that now. But I haven't really got 8,000 subscribers. These are people who've come across The Amazing Atheist or something, you know, I don't know where they get me from. And they never watch my videos. there's probably about 150, 200 people, maybe a bit less than that, who actually watch my videos. And those are the people I'm interested in. That's who I'm talking to, as well as yourself, Gary. I'm talking to those people. I'm not interested in what the other, whatever it is, 7,800 think, really, because they're not involved, you know. I mean, no offence meant to those people, but they're not involved. So, you know, what I would like is a subscription box feature where if your subscription isn't used, it, what would be the word, it just cancels itself. You know, because I look at my subscriptions occasionally, and there's loads of dead accounts in there, there's loads of what appear to, I don't know what they are, completely empty accounts with little icons of attractive looking girls. So it's clearly some kind of scam going on there that I don't know what that's about. There's some people who have subscribed more than once, so it's the same person over and over again. Some of them are, well, some of them are people that haven't been around for a while and then suddenly come back. But you know, a lot of it's dead, and as I say, even a lot of people who keep their accounts going and are genuine YouTubers in some fashion, even if it's just viewers, even if it's viewers, not just even if it's viewers, they don't watch my stuff, they just ignore it. Which is, again, it's absolutely fine, but it's deceptive, you know, when you look at this 8,000 subscribers or 10,000 subscribers, which I think Corey's got right now, or who else? 5,000 that I think To Be Serious has got, 2,500 that Mel's Basket Case has got. You know, these numbers are kind of meaningless, because the same number of people pretty much watch most of our videos. It's the same group of folk, isn't it, really? A lot of overlap. And I would just like it so it's, if a subscriber doesn't watch your videos for a while, then the subscription just retires itself, you know. If I don't watch one of my subscriptions videos for a month, then I'm automatically unsubscribed from that person. That would be helpful. I would like that. It wouldn't directly address the problem of advertising and Google being evil, but at least I think it would clarify what's going on, you know, because the race to accumulate subscribers is toxic, I think, and plays into the Google mentality. What else? Yeah, I would like a meaningful distinction between those people who are playing the Google game and those people who aren't. I think I've probably mentioned this before, actually. But you know, when you make a YouTube account, you can say what kind of an account it is. You know, YouTuber, guru, director, musician, something like that. I can't remember what the categories are, but they're essentially meaningless, those categories. They don't do anything. And I would really like it if it was meaningful. You know, if there was one that said YouTuber and one that said Starfucker or wannabe, whatever, you know what I mean, someone who really is playing that game. That would be really interesting, you know, because I would set mine at YouTuber. I would assume that I was asking that meant a couple of hundred people involved in my videos, and that would be fine. If at some point I changed my mind, of course, I could change my designation. In fact, I would make it so that let's have a think how this would work. Yeah, I would make it if I ruled the world and every day would be the first day of spring. I would make it that for people who designate themselves as YouTubers, there was no advertising on the page, none, and they had a maximum subscriptions of something like 500, let's say, or 1,000 people, and maximum view counts of 2,000 views per video, something like that. And if it went over that, if their subscriptions went over a certain number, 1,000, let's say, or if the view count for a video went over a certain number, say 2,000, then that video or that channel would automatically be designated a wannabe or a starfucker or a rising current something, you know, that kind of thing. Then it would attract the advertising, you know, because then it's doing what YouTube wants it to do. It is starting to have at least some kind of mass appeal. It is attracting people who are stupid enough to click on adverts, therefore put adverts. But if you're not attracting that number of people, what's the point of putting an advert on there? I don't know. So that's what I would do. Does that make any sense? you know, a 2-tier system or 3-tier system, where the bottom tier or A tier, I would say the top tier personally, but a tier has a relatively low subscriber and view count in the high hundreds or low thousands, but it doesn't carry any advertising. And those popularity hounds who seek greater view counts and simultaneously, of course, have to seek adverts and have to seek people who click on adverts. That'd be good. It's not going to happen though, is it? It's just not going to happen. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. Yeah, maybe there's maybe do a small campaign where everybody puts something as their background or as their icon. People who, I don't know, you know, people who are involved in, people who think like you think, Gary, or like a lot of other people think about adverts and about Google generally, who've made Google is evil videos. I mean, maybe there should be a campaign of a certain kind of background or a certain kind of icon. I know there's the Google is evil icon you did there, Gary, but maybe like a no logo thing, you know, just makes it really clear. So it'd be like the No Logo Alliance of YouTubers, the No Logo YouTube Alliance. Is that an acronym? No. Nelia, something like that. Where you know, everybody who participates in that, all 15 of us, would be, you know, we'd have a no logo background, a no logo video featured, a no logo, you know, avatar. Yeah, that take it to the bridge, wouldn't it? That would, what's the word? What would the phrase for that? That would show the man, wouldn't it? That, yeah, those corporate running dogs of capitalism. Once those 15 of us put those avatars up, they'd be so scared. Yeah, that would be good. I mean, the other is the YouTube alternative. I mean, that's the other thing. And I still think, I mean, I don't think there's ever going to be a true YouTube alternative. Well, maybe not never, but I don't see in the near future a non-commercial alternative, much as I'd like one. The nearest I can think of is, it's just to return to an idea I've talked about before, which is kind of YouTube villages. Because the thing about, just to rehearse what that means again, it means a small collective of people, 200 people let's say, who affiliate themselves in some way to being a community, which doesn't necessarily mean a community of similarity. It could be a community of difference. You know, people who talk to each other. You know, even the people who row with each other are part of the same community, aren't they? That's the point. So it would be a community made of difference and disparate opinions and loves and hates and all the things that communities should have. But it's got maybe 200 people in tops. Because one of the advantages of that, in terms of what I'm talking about right now, is that communities are far easier to migrate than individuals. You know what I mean? You start a campaign now. Let's all go and join whatever it was, that thing that TJ started, free something vids that wasn't free, you know, that one. Or let's all go and join something that Gary does, or let's go do something that I do. Let's all go and do that. I mean, you're basically just shouting into the void when you do that, don't you, most of the time? Because everybody feels that they're individuals, and everybody there's no mutual knowledge, as it's sometimes called. But if you've got a community, an identified community of individuals, as I say, which might have a lot of difference, then you can migrate the whole community. You can say, look, let's just 200 people or 150 people or just 50 people. Let's all just up sticks for a while and move across to Blip. Or let's all make second Facebook accounts and put all of our videos on Facebook. Or let's, you know, use Vimeo for a bit. Or let's all buy a bit of server space and stick it all on there, you know. Or let's all keep our videos where they are, but let's all put them on a Ning account at the same time. Which I know is again something you try, Gary, and something I've kicked around a little bit. But you would need the community first. You know, you would need the community, have the community recognise the value of its interactions, good, bad or indifferent, and then get some community action involving either migration or cloning or something else that takes it away from Google, that takes the focus off Google. Yeah, that might work. I mean, even if everybody just went to Blip, or not everybody, but if I know Blip has its own glitches, but Blip does cross-post, and it does send stuff out to iTunes, it does send stuff out to Internet Archive and all those kind of things. So at least you distribute it. So it wouldn't really matter in a sense if one of your instantiations of a particular video was on YouTube. If it's also on Blip, it's also in Vimeo, it's because it's all been distributed by something like the Blip system. Actually, if somebody could write a non-commercial alternative which had syndication and cross-posting built into it, that would be really great. I would love that. Yeah, that's it really. I mean, the complaint is nothing to do with Google. It's to do with people. I'm not going to say I'm so sick of the drama on YouTube, because everybody says I'm so sick of the drama on YouTube. But of course, when you say I'm so sick of the drama on YouTube, you effectively are part of the drama on YouTube. But I am sick of the drama on YouTube. I am really sick of it. I actually hold one person responsible for this drama on YouTube, rightly or wrongly, probably scapegoated. I don't care. I hold one person responsible. I am not going to say who it is, because they are a person who is a non-person in my head, so I don't say their name. I never watch this person's videos, respond to comments, but I blame them completely for all of the bad feeling and toxicity in YouTube and environs. But either way, yeah, I fucking hate it. I hate it. I mean, I have a principle now where if I start a video, even if it's somebody I really like, and they start talking about somebody else, I just stop it immediately. And if I look at a video title and it's got something about somebody else, not a response to an argument, I'm talking about you said that and he said that, and on Twitter last night and on Blog TV, and I've recorded you saying that, or look at what you said in an instant message. If any of that stuff, even the title is indicated, I immediately dismiss that. And I'm going to start unsubscribing for people if it doesn't stop, because I'm fed up of it. Which isn't to say that I may not indulge in it myself sometimes, but if I do, I would encourage anybody to do the same. Click off me, ignore me, unsubscribe. Don't make a video saying, that Fred you're always doing about drama. Don't do that, because that's drama. And so much moral high ground seeking, I'm not going to participate in this drama. That's just drama. It's an attempt to have moral high ground. I fucking hate that too. Now, if someone says something that's shit, ignore it. It's like kids, my kids. I've got kids, little fuckers. But what they say with kids is that children need examples, not critics. Children need examples, not critics. You should spend more time doing the things that you want your kids to do, and less time telling them not to do the things they're doing. And I think the same thing applies to YouTube. We should be helping each other out, pushing each other up to the next level, as they say in corporate world, in Google headquarters, no doubt. Go to the next level, not trying to scrabble ahead ourselves by stepping on the head of the person below us, saying I've got more moral sense than you have. I'm able to distance myself from this argument better than you because you said this in an instant message, you fuckwit. Hate it. Absolutely hate it. So yeah, I'm just not watching you anymore, sorry. If you people are continuing, actually if you're still watching, you should have clicked off this video by now. Yeah, look, I'm talking about drama, you're supposed to have clicked off by now. You're not listening clearly. I would have clicked off by now. I'd have heard the word drama, I would have clicked off. Because that lowers the tone of the whole neighbourhood, doesn't it? There's no point to us bitching about Google being evil and YouTube being a popularity engine and appealing to the lowest common denominator when what we do in our neck of the woods is shit. Because quite frankly, I say this with my hand somewhere approximating my cardiac organ. I say this, I think that the few hundred people that I know here, a little bit, and I'm not saying no in the most general sense of acquaintances, of commenters who I've had sustained relationships with, and YouTubers I've had relatively sustained contact with, if not relationship, because there's lots of people here whose videos I've watched but I don't think I've ever exchanged comments with. I think we're brilliant. I think we're the cream of the crop, personally. You know, I really value pretty much everyone I'm in contact with overall. You know, mistakes and drama notwithstanding, and that includes both sides of every single fucking debate. You know, I mean, I don't watch some of the debates. I haven't watched hardly any of this kind of trans thing. I saw the title and thought, yeah, that's going to be shit, and it was. So, but I like everybody who's involved in it, or I value everybody who's involved in that. You know, the same as the stuff to do with kind of misogyny and radical feminism versus some kind of feminism that is radical, perhaps. You know, I value everybody who's involved in there. They don't seem to value themselves or one another very much, but I value them a lot, actually. Just a tiny bit more about Sassy Bob. This is probably out of date, actually, because many of the videos I make, I don't get to upload them for a couple of days, and often the conversation moves on. But anyway, never mind. I mean, I think it's interesting for all the reasons I've said in previous videos, and I don't really have the same ethical problems as some other people have. But one of the things that I would find, and this is just me projecting onto Sassy Bob, you may think differently, Bob, yourself, if you ever watched this video. One of the things I would find is an impossibility to maintain any kind of respect for the people who watch my videos, at least most of them. You know, because the comments that people have left, you know, all the anal sex comments, all the really predictable stuff, you know, all the stuff that's basically revealing of what a 14-year-old boy's sexuality looks like, or more likely what the sexual maturity of a 40-year-old man looks like, which is more the case, I suspect. You know, to get that, which is why I think it's so interesting, the fact that all that information becomes available, to see that really stupid, led by the balls sexuality so nakedly on display is very interesting. But at the same time, I couldn't look at that as the progenitor of that without having just no respect at all for those people. You know, I mean, it reminds me of fairgrounds. You know, like if you're running a stall on a fairground, which I understand people say refer to the customers as marks. Yeah, and Mark, as a customer of a fairground. And if I'm running some, if I'm a customer of one of those things, and I'm throwing darts, you know, there's some playing cards nailed to a board at the far side of this little booth, and I'm given 3 darts, I've paid my money, and he says, throw the darts, and if you hit the ace, you get this big cuddly toy. You throw the darts, he says, oh, you were so close that time. Here, here's another 3 darts. Throw again, I'm sure. Oh, so close, he says. You must have done this before. Here's another 3 darts. I'm sure you can get this time, mate. Oh, bad luck. Never mind. Come back later, we'll still be here. You know, and he says this, and you know, even while you're doing it, you know that this guy thinks you're a fucking idiot. And the more you do it, the more of a fucking idiot he thinks you are. Even whilst he's encouraged you to do it. Even whilst he's playing into your desires to be good at something. Even while he's exposing the stupidity of your own wish to excel. And your willingness to suspend disbelief in this fake friendliness. Even whilst all that's happening, you know that the more you play his game, the more despising he is of you as a person. So, and I think there's a kind of similar thing going on with this. I mean, I may be wrong, you know. I don't know, who knows. But if I was Sassy Bob, I would be despising the people who are writing the comments. And the more they engage, the more I would despise them. I was thinking, Jesus, are you really so stupid? Are you really so predictable? Do you really have that low a level of sexual maturity that you'll buy this? Look, it's my bum! Tattoo my bum! That's nothing against you, Bob. You know, I'm sure you're a very nice, you seem a nice enough person. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with, you know, doing anything you're doing, really. It's fine. It's all good. No one's going to stop you. It's your stuff. It's your ideas. I like a bit of entertainment myself. But it's so interesting that I find that that particular form of entertainment, it flies so close to being really deeply insulting to the people who engage in it. It's one of the reasons why I think it's interesting, actually, because it has these edges to it, you know, which just need a bit of polishing to really bring out. That's just me though, isn't it? Actually, what I've just been saying about Sassy Bob, which is basically that it must be very difficult for this person, Sassy Bob, it must be very difficult for you to maintain a positive view of your subscribers, or at least some of your subscribers and commenters, when the comments that they make are so predictable and so immature, I guess you would say, and sometimes downright offensive. I guess the same must be true of something like Lacey Green. I don't really watch many of Lacey Green's videos. I watch one or two occasionally. And of course, the comments are just endless, wall-to-wall, titty-fuck comments, basically. Not all of them, actually. That's a bit unfair, but a lot of them are like that. And it must be a real strain, I would imagine, for Lacey Green or someone like that not to come away with an incredibly low opinion of those commenters, and possibly for men in general. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just mistaken. Maybe people like those kind of comments. Maybe those comments are fine. Maybe it's just my hang-ups or something. Maybe I'm just a bit repressed, and maybe I just think that that women who get comments like that, even when they're not talking about anything remotely to do with sex and sexuality, which doesn't apply to Lacey Green, of course, because I know that's what you talk about, Lacey. But you know, maybe it's absolutely fine. Maybe those people like those kind of comments and they are appropriate. And my finding it a bit strange, just the sheer quantity of those, is a sign of my repressed Victorian morals. I don't think so. I think if I was female, or a particular kind of male, a bit more attractive kind of male, if I was female and I got that many comments, I would come away thinking, you bunch of wankers. I would think that. Sorry, I just would. And by inference, men were a bunch of wankers. That's what I would be inclined to think. You know what I mean? Actually, there's a kind of name for this. It's not really a name. It's in one of Steven Pinker's books, and he's talking about, I can't remember which one it is now. It's either The Blank Slate or well before that. But he's talking about sexuality. And male sexuality in particular, and some fairly disturbing findings about what men will do. And he gives two instances, one of which is that it's a set-up situation where a woman goes up to, I'm prepared, you know, she's an experimental person. She goes up to someone on a college campus, because it's carried out on a college campus, this first one. She goes up to a man, a youth on a college campus, and says, "Excuse me, I've noticed you around campus and I really find you very attractive, and I wonder if you'd like to go out sometime." That's the line that she says. And something like 50% or 70% agree to go out that evening, and within, you know, and the number who agree to go out within the next week, it goes up to like 97%, almost 100%. But this is the case, even because there's a questionnaire which follows it. That's the case whether that person is in a relationship, is married, has a fiance, has children. You know, they'll all do it. Almost all of them will do it. I've seen the second, I'm not sure if it's got the same source, but there's a second one which is carried out in the nightclub, and obviously a nightclub narrows your population, your sample, quite considerably. But it's carried out in a nightclub. The similar kind of thing, where a woman goes up to a man in the nightclub and says, I've noticed you around the club and I find you really attractive. Would you like to go into the bathroom stall now so I can give you a blowjob? That's the line. And again, the take-up rate is something like 75%. Most, 3/4 of men will say, yeah, okay. And those who don't will apologise. They'll say, oh, I'd like to, but I'm with my girlfriend right now. and I'm with my wife right now. And of those ones who apologise, many of them will try to negotiate a time when that blowjob can take place when the wife or girlfriend is not around. Terrifying statistic, and one which has made me very wary of what people say to me in nightclubs or on college campuses, just in case I'm an experimental subject. Anyway, the reason why I say this is because Steven Pinker tells this story and cites these statistics, and he's talking about the conversation he has with one of his female colleagues about this, and she says, "Ah, yes, I know this. This is called the men are slime theory. The men are slime theory." So I do wonder whether Lacey, yourself, Bob, and I guess maybe other female presenters on YouTube here, whether you are subscribers to the men are slime theory, or whether we have evolved to the status of I don't know, something that creeps along the ground rather than just growing on the north face of trees. I don't know. Actually, a little more on this men are slime thing. You know, whether whether women who get a lot of comments, predictable comments, immature, predictable teenage boy kind of comments, whether they have a lower opinion of men as a result. I was speaking to my sister about this. My sister is a little bit older than me, but she's kind of been involved on the edges of the adult industry for most of her working life, actually. I think I probably mentioned she was a Playboy bunny, but she's also like worked in and run like lap dancing bars and pole dancing bars. She ran a sex shop for a while. She ran a dressing service for transvestites as part of a sex shop. Lots of really interesting stories about that. And she knows lots of people who are in those kind of businesses. She knows lots of gangsters as well, actually. But you know, she's a really nice person, my sister. She's great. But she doesn't have a low opinion of men at all, actually, because she's had a lot of those kind of comments. You know, I mean, obviously she's a bit older than me now, so she's still really good looking, but she's obviously not getting as many comments as she used to. But she used to get a lot of comments, you know, and a lot of playground kind of behaviour from guys. It still does, you know. But her attitude towards it is always, it's a bit patronising, but it's very positive. It's always, you know, oh, men, what are they like? You know, it's that kind of a thing, really. Men, what are they like? And just kind of treats it as something you get over, you know. Yeah, you want to have sex with me, yeah. And then try to get something on the other side of that, really. I don't know how she does it, to be honest. Because as I say, she does generally have a high opinion of, or appears to have quite a high opinion of men, even though she's seen a lot of that kind of silliness, of how silly we men can really be, and we can be fucking silly. You know, when we're being led by the bollocks, we are incredibly stupid, unpredictable, and sometimes nasty, you know, quite frankly. And she, as I say, she's seen a lot of it, but it doesn't seem to have, at least on the surface, it doesn't seem to have jaundiced her at all. I must ask her, I must talk to her about the men of slime theory specifically and see what she says. Again, Gary, this is to yourself, Gary in Mendham. And it's about your comment box. This is probably a really stupid question. I'm not nearly as technically proficient as you guys are, but is there a way of embedding that comment box you've got onto a page? Do you know what I mean by that? I'm sure you do. You know, if there's a way of making an embed code for that comment box, so it could be embedded on different pages, that would be really handy. I mean, I know you, for good reasons, you want it on your own, under your own control. I can see that. That's fine. But if there was a way of embedding it, so I could put it on my Ning page, or it could be put onto a blog page, something like that. But obviously, updates when the content updates. So as people add new comments, then it would update on the embed. You know what I mean? I think that would be really helpful, if that was possible. You know, then those of us who, I mean, I don't keep my site terribly well, but those people who do keep sites could also have their comments where the rest of their material is, rather than being on your place. Just a thought. I'm trying to think into these ideas to do with having sensation, you know, having bodily organs of sense, like eyes and ears, that kind of thing. I'm trying to think the relationship between that, the notion of a self, and feelings, and particularly the possibility of movement. Because here I guess I'm leaning on people like Rudolfo Linas and other people who've written about motor cognition. I can't pull the names to mind right now. Motor cognition. With the idea being, and this is Linas as well, the idea being that, well, Linas's phrase is that thinking is internalized motion, internalized movement. But the idea of it is that thinking is what we call, what has evolved into thinking, is really an evolution of relatively simple cognitive processes that come out of our ability to move, or out of our ancestors, even our very simple ancestors' ability to move. And not just move, but make self-directed action. Not action, you know, not being blown about by the wind, or being, I don't know, you can get the thing I'm talking about. And not even the kind of movement that plants do in terms of being able to turn towards the sun, but action that seems to be about making choices between good and bad options. And the idea is that at some point in our history, when animals started to acquire the capacity to, you know, choose this road or that road, then accompanying that is a set of cognitive processes which allow this road or that road to be differentially valued. Because, you know, I'm not talking literally roads, but just to stay with that metaphor for a moment, you know, an animal that makes a choice down this road and that road leads to hell and a hand bucket, or leads to death and pain, that's a bad choice. This road over here, which leads to reproductive success, it leads to survival, shelter, nutrients, those kind of things. I mean, there is a particular, in terms of the criteria of survival that organisms have, there is a value attached to one or other of those roads, isn't there? And the fact that an animal is capable of initiating movement and making a choice between this road or that road means that those values can be acted upon. So how does the animal how are those values instantiated in the animal to allow it to act upon those values in a way which makes sense, to allow it to walk down the road that leads to nutrients and shelter, rather than the road that leads to death and impotence? And so the idea goes, that's where you get positive and negative sensation from. Pain and pleasure, broadly speaking, but much more subtly than that. Beauty and ugliness, attraction and repulsion, unpleasant textures as opposed to pleasant textures. I can't even think the language of this stuff. But it's that kind of idea that at some point in our simpler history, we were directed to go down the right road by our brains, wielding carrots and sticks. You know, that's the road that leads to success. This is the road that leads to failure, and we're going to help you make that choice by giving you a pain if you go down the wrong road, and giving you a feeling of satisfaction if you go down the right road. I mean, that's the idea of that. That's the idea that underpins motor cognition, and in a relatively simple way. The crucial thing is, of course, there has to be sensation. It can't just be the way that sunflowers go or something like that, because sunflowers don't have sensation. There's a different thing going on there. They're not able to make the wrong choice. You know, the principle of sensation is it has to be, at least in theory, possible to make the wrong choice. You know, you have. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any. If it was impossible to make the wrong choice, evolution would not have provided you with pains. You know, if it was inevitable you had to make the right choice, evolution would not have provided pleasures to support those choices. But as I say, the ideas of motor cognition take that basic principle and then use those as the kind of binary elements from which to build the complex computational structures of, well, initially brains, simple brains, and then layer upon layer upon layer, you know, virtual machine instantiating virtual machine instantiating virtual machine, until you get something like complex human consciousness, or complex other animal consciousnesses, and the various tricks that these different versions of what we now call consciousness do, which in our case is this human consciousness thing and the language thing and all that kind of stuff. But it's built out of, in terms of the theories I'm talking about, it's built out of those very simple elements, which is the possibility of making alternative choices, and those possibilities being represented as feelings of initially pleasures and pains. The difficulty I have with it, and I better put the difficulty in there right now, is that it brings kind of free will into it. It's one of the things that's produced out of all that. You know, once the machine gets up and running and it complexifies itself and it layers itself and it builds re-entry loops and there's feedback loops within feedback loops and that whole thing gets running, then one of those things it produces is this idea of a self. Yeah, this idea of a self that we can point to and use the words like I and me about and all that kind of stuff. So the machine itself becomes represented in its own cognitive processes in order to be able to make predictions or whatever. So that this self kind of arises from that. But if the self arises at that point, then what's the origin of the self-directed action that takes place earlier on? I'm sure there's a really simple answer, I just can't think it. You know what I mean? Because you've got like this really simple life form, which can do some basic moving around, even if it's just crawling, as the basics of a necessary sensory motor and central nervous system, obviously, otherwise it wouldn't do it, which gives it positive and negative responses to the direction of its crawling. But how does it... Well, actually, I think I'm answering my own question here. If the default state is just movement, if it's just moving, you know, mover's got to move, yeah? So if this thing is just necessarily moving, it's just in motion, then and what it can do is navigate, is guide that motion according to positive and negative sensations, then that would do it, wouldn't it? Because it wouldn't need to initiate movement. The confusion I've got for myself, but I think I've resolved, is that if you imagine a sessile organism, one that's just staying still, but it has the potential to move, it just doesn't, what would be the motivating factor for it to get up and move in the first place? Well, there wouldn't be any, would it? You would need a self, or something like a proto-self, in order to initiate the action in some direction. But if the thing is already in motion, if it's I don't know, swimming, let's say, if it's necessarily swimming with a tide, or if it's necessarily rolling or doing something like that, then those positive and negative valued choices would be navigation choices rather than initiating choices. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Does it make sense? I don't know if it makes sense. I'm just trying to think about this pain, pleasure, the kind of machine code of consciousness, the machine code of sentience being written in the language of positive and negative sensations. You know, if there's anything in this motor cognition idea or something like it, that the origins of complex, in this case human life and human mind, lies in the ability of our really simple ancestors to make choices between positive and negatively evaluated situations, then in a sense that machine code, you know, the positive and negative forms the logic binary of our machine code. So for me it's almost as if, and this is just a visualization, it's almost as if this landscape that I'm looking out on here, which is just off the M5 in Gloucestershire, which is quite bucolic, it's pretty, but there's also electricity pylons, there's a road here obviously that I'm driving on, which have got fast cars coming opposite direction. It's almost as if this landscape was represented in the machine code. Instead of there being zeros and ones, it would be written in little smiley faces and little frowny faces. You know those things you get on text and stuff at the end of messages, little frowny face, little smiley face, and there'd be millions and millions of them. You know, every pixel of this in this scene would be a smiley face and a frowny face, just representing those positives and negatives. But within that, you know, there'd be larger patterns formed. Do you know what I mean? Because obviously some of these experiences, this road for example, it's got, you know, oncoming cars representing the potential for danger, which would all be codified in frowny faces. But it's also got my own car taking me to in a very smooth way towards my destination, So there'll be a certain number of smiley faces attached to that one. So, and these things might form patterns, you know, and the overall pattern might have a generally kind of smiley countenance attached to it, or it might have a generally kind of frowny face on it. And then there'll probably be larger clusters of this visual scene, which make it generally frowny or generally smiley. Or maybe by the time you get to a larger assembly of frownies and smileys, it starts to acquire some gradation. So it's a little bit it's a bit uncertain, you know, a bit ambivalent about whether it's smiling or not. It's got one of those little faces that goes down the side, or like a wry grin, or maybe it's a winky face at this point. Do you know what I mean? So that the world starts to take, and maybe there's a great big one for the whole experience, you know, which has captured some of the complexities of past smiley face, frowny face logic, and some predictions about how the future will be, and it's combining that with the present and everything else that I know, and it's given the whole world a kind of countenance, a big yellow face with some kind of an expression on it, made out of, you know, and the pixels for that big face will be smaller faces, and the pixels in that will be smaller faces, and the pixels in that, pixels and smiley faces and frowny faces all the way down. I mean, my world is generally fairly smiley, but it's a little weather beaten. You know, if I was to have a smiley face for for the big world that's being produced by all this machine code being reprocessed as higher order instantiations, being run as routines within a bigger, you know, all that kind of stuff. The big face that's produced by all of that software for me is generally smiley, a bit weather beaten. It's got a lined forehead. Its eyes have got a little bit of sadness, and an edge of cynicism, or yeah, a little bit of cynicism in the eyes, but genuinely quite compassionate and smiley, that face that I'm trying that the world is showing me out of all that smiley culture. I just want to say a little bit about thermostats. So I've talked about thermostats once or twice, I use them as examples in this conversation with Piro and one or two other people, Gary particularly, about as kind of thermostats as being the simplest system, which is capable of detecting certain conditions in its environment and responding to those conditions. And Piro, you responded by kind of sneering at my well, I wouldn't say analysis, but my comparison of a thermostat to an amoeba. I just want to stick up for thermostats in a bit, really, actually, on thermostats and things like them, because in one of your videos you were talking about systems which had some kind of awareness or responsiveness or detection abilities, at least, and you were using things like cameras. But there's a big difference between a camera and a thermostat, and for me, or a motion detector or a light detector, and the key difference for me, which I probably didn't flesh out enough, is it isn't just that they detect the conditions in their environment, it's that by detecting they change the conditions of their environment. I mean, that's the point of a thermostat, isn't it? You put a thermostat in a room connected to a heater, and then when the temperature in the room drops, the thermostat triggers, by detecting the fall in temperature through the bimetallic strip thing, the temperature drops, the thermostat triggers, turns on a heater, so the temperature in the room rises. Yeah, or if it's a cooling system, the same thing in reverse. But it's not just that the thermostat detecting the change in its environment or detecting some aspects of the environment. It's that by responding, it's changing that environment. And it's the same thing with motion detectors. And I guess where I'm thinking of is motion detectors like the PIR sensor I've got outside my house. You know, if someone comes up to my front door, the detector picks up motion and turns a light on. The key thing about it isn't that it's an interesting piece of plastic nailed to my wall. The key thing is that motion triggers something that changes the environment. It goes from being a dark environment to a light environment. And that's kind of the point with those things, really. So that's why I'm using things like thermostats as the bottom end of that range of detection. And in terms of the crucial distinction that I was making, of course amoebas are much more complicated than thermostats or motion detectors, no one's arguing with that. But in terms of the crucial distinctions I was trying to draw, which is the building blocks of sentience, which is having sensors that not only respond to the environment and then do something to change that environment, but also work through pleasures and pains to allow an organism to make choices, I guess, kind of, or to evaluate choices within that environment and decide whether to respond or not. I mean, that's I personally would put thermostats, or the thermostatically controlled system, in the same camp as an amoeba and sentient life forms in a different category, because that is a critical kind of watershed distinction I would make. In terms of, yeah, I suppose I've talked a little bit about sensory motor systems, motor cognition, and how that changes the game a bit, really. And I think it kind of does, really, because once there is the possibility of motion, then it becomes really important to be able to evaluate where you are going, you know, where your path is leading, doesn't it, really? I suppose I've been trying to think of the simplest, not sensory motor system, but the simplest mobile unit which uses the simplest feedback loop, like a thermostat or a light detector. And I was prompted to think it, actually, when I was watching one of Greatex's videos. I think it was called something like Corporate Illuminati Fail. He was walking through a corridor in this place where it works at night, and the motion detectors aren't set right, they're not sensitive enough, so the lights don't actually come on until you've walked past the place where the lights were. So you're constantly walking into the darkness with lights coming on just behind you, which seems mad, of course. So I'm just kind of reworking that image to think, well, what would it be like if, not Greatex, but a simpler life form, and they do exist, Greatex, a simpler life form than yourself, Greatex, really simple, like a thermostat or a little clockwork toy, had a light detector built into it, with that light detector being connected to the various motors. And you wouldn't need the lights going on and off, you just have a room, yeah, with various lights on in different places. And you would set it so that when the light falls across the light detector, the motors engage, and this thing just shuttles around the floor for a bit, you know, the wheels just spin and it moves at random around the floor. They would keep doing that until it moves into an area of shadow, you know, under a couch or tucked into a corner, moves to an area of shadow, no light is falling on the detector, and the motors stop. Yeah. So what you got there basically is a very, very simple creature which appears to outside from the outside to be seeking darkness. It's looking for the shadows. And kind of changing its environment. It's not literally changing its environment, but it's changing the relationship between itself. It's changing its local environment by moving to a different local environment. A dark, shady one in that particular case. I mean, where it would start to get interesting, and this is where motor cognition and pain comes back in, where it would start to get interesting was if that little tiny creature, this little tiny light detecting motor, clockwork toy, if it became possible for that entity to not go into the darkness, but to stay in the light. You know, you give it a kind of competing set of, I don't know, I'm trying to use the word desires, but you know, that's just completely wrong. You give it a competing set of scripts that compelled it to stay in the light, and then you would give it a way to weigh up those things, and you would have to find a way of representing that weighing up, or that being in the light whilst it weighed those things up, as pain. You see, this is where it gets difficult, because there's no way of talking about pain in mechanistic terms, these terms at least. Then you would begin to have the possibility of feedback loop. Because you know, you'd have an organism then which could choose pain. It could decide somehow. Decide is all the wrong language as well. It could decide to go through this period of pain, this brightly lit, illuminated bit, because it knows that there is a much darker patch at the other side of the room. Yeah, but it's having to make the choice of go through the pain in order to be able to get the thing at the other side. Without that possibility of accepting pain, or conversely resisting pleasure, or deferring gratification, or any of those kind of things, then there isn't the beginnings of the things that I think we would call sentience. All you've got is a clockwork toy that stays in the shadows. It would be a cool one, don't get me wrong, it would certainly be more interesting to look at than an amoeba, and you're more likely to sell it than an amoeba. But yeah, I think thermostats are cool.